If anyone can show me one example in the history of the world of a single psychic who's been able to prove under reasonable experimental conditions that they are able to read minds. And if anyone can show me one example in the history of the world of a single astrologer who's been able to prove under reasonable experimental conditions that they can predict future human events by interpreting celestial signs. And if anyone can show me one example in the history of the world of a single homeopathic practitioner who's been able to prove under reasonable experimental conditions that solutions made up of infinitely tiny particles of good stuff dissolved repeatedly into relatively huge quantities of water have a consistently higher medicinal value than a similarly administered placebo. And if anyone can show me one example in the history of the world of a single spiritual person who's been able to show either empirically or logically the existence of a higher power with any consciousness or interest in the human race, or ability to punish or reward humans for their moral choices, or that there is any reason other than fear to believe in any version of an afterlife, I will give you my piano, one of my legs, and my wife.
Hello, and welcome to Reason. Today is Sunday, January 15th, and this episode is entitled, Jessica Alquist won her lawsuit, and Cheryl Perich lost hers. So we're batting about 500. Damn ministerial exception. I'm Joshua Billingsley, along with Paul Whitmire.
How you doing?
And this podcast is coming to you live from sunny Buffalo, New York. Reason Podcast is a weekly discussion of events, current and historical, from a skeptical, rational, and non-theological perspective. Reason Podcast is brought to you by The Offensive Atheists and the atheist community of Buffalo and Western New York. For further information, please visit our blog and website at wnyatheist.org, or you can email us at reason@wnyatheist.org. An exploratory study of the effects of paranormal and spiritual experiences on people's lives and well-being, by J.E. Kennedy and H. Kenthamani.
That's a good try. Yeah, I would have went with Kenthamani as well.
Yes.
So.
Journal of the American Society for Psychical Research. Okay,
so number one, I'm not even sure that psychical is a word.
I've got problems with that myself.
I guess if it's in print, it's a word, so we'll just go with that.
It's pronounceable, so I'm going to call it a word. It probably has a definition and everything.
Yes. The Journal for Psychical Research, though.
Yep.
It's a highly selective journal. It's difficult. It's one of your like tier 1 publishing levels. If you can get in the Journal of Psychical Research, you've really hit the big time there.
Oh yes, yes.
Government grants would be a-coming.
Not to mention that, and I hate to be a bigot about these sorts of things because they don't really matter, but neither of these people have any letters after their name.
No, they don't appear to.
No M's, no P's, no D's, no S's, nothing.
Of course, neither do you or I, so.
Well, that's right, but I'm not published in the Journal of Psychical.
We have to look at it every time because I can't possibly believe that it is.
I know, I had to stop it and reread it.
It can't be. Oh, yeah, it is. It's psychical. Okay. Anyway, Josh.
This is a study about how paranormal and transcendent experiences have impacted people's lives.
Okay.
The study was done with questionnaires. They were developed to investigate the effects that paranormal and transcendent/spiritual experiences have on people's lives. Data from a convenience sample. Is a convenience sample a real thing?
Sure.
Okay.
A sample that is convenient, I guess.
Sure.
Yeah.
A convenience sample of 120 people, quote, actively interested in parapsychology, who reported having had at least one paranormal and or transcendent experience.
Okay.
That showed that these experiences increased their interest and beliefs in spiritual matters and increased their sense of self-being and well-being. This is a fairly long article for the small amount of material that it covers, but They open up by mentioning that virtually, and this is something that you and I, Paul, will agree with. So far, we'll be on the same page with these folks.
Okay, what do you got?
Virtually no research has been done in parapsychology on the effects of psychic experiences on people's lives and worldviews.
Okay, I actually don't even know if that's true or not. I mean, the effect of psychic experiences on people's lives. You're making some assumptions there. So,
well, they do comment that several studies have found that near-death experiences induce positive changes or transformation in many people.
Yep, just like LSD.
Right. So they're trying to. Well, let's be fair. So far, okay, I'm on board. And the purpose of the present study was to first develop questionnaires to evaluate the effects of paranormal and mystical/spiritual experiences on people's lives. So the purpose of the study is to develop the questionnaire that they use in the study.
Okay.
That's neither here nor there. And second, to collect initial data with the questionnaires. So that seems fine. They don't know how to perform a study. So they're performing a study to find out what flies.
Well, they don't have the proper tools, is what they're saying, and they're basically okay. So we're trying to invent a way to quantify and then test it out in the field. It sounds like what they're saying.
Well, that is about right. This was done with three questionnaires. The first two, the primary questionnaires for the study, were influenced by several factors, including published work, the previous experience of the people reporting, the previous experience of the scientists.
Did you pause because you couldn't think of the word, or because you didn't want to call them scientists?
I couldn't come up with a better word, but that's what I eventually fell on. But the basic idea is they develop these questions. They pull them out of their behind. They have three questionnaires. The first one is an index of change resulting from experiences. The second is a checklist of effects of experiences.
Okay.
And the third one is a life experience questionnaire, just in general. So the three questionnaires they put together. The questionnaires focus on paranormal and transcendent experiences. Paranormal experiences were described as including psychic and out-of-body experiences, healing, miracles, communication with the dead, apparitions, that sort of thing. Transcendent experiences include profound mystical or spiritual experiences, which were characterized in the life experiences questionnaire as an, quote, overwhelming feeling of peace and unity with the entire creation or profound inner sense of divine presence.
Ooh, that sounds nice.
It really does.
Yeah, it sounds like a happy place to be.
All right. Now, just quickly through the three studies, the index of change resulting from experience is a questionnaire that asks respondents whether paranormal or transcendent experiences resulted in an increase, decrease, or no change in each of 21 feelings or characteristics. The second checklist of effects of experiences is the questionnaire lists 20 statements of possible effects of paranormal or transcendent experiences and asks the people to check all of those that apply to him or her.
Okay.
And thirdly is, of course, just a list of things that you check off whether or not you have experienced this thing or not. Now, here's where it gets fun. The respondents, now there are 120 of them. The great majority were actively interested in parapsychology and were typical of people who volunteer for parapsychological research.
I'm sure that group is a little bit shifted as compared to the general.
A fact they concede later on in the paper.
Okay.
Only people who reported one or more paranormal or transcendent experiences were included in the analysis. The 120 respondents with experiences were seven drop-in visitors to the Institute of Parapsychology, 9 people who contacted the Institute by mail or phone, 9 participants who were also in a 1994 study, 3 staff members of the Institute.
Okay.
3 members of the Association for Research and Enlightenment, which is the Edgar Cayce group. Or Edgar Cayce, excuse me. Edgar Cayce group.
Yeah, I thought it was Casey, but
3 college students from the mail survey, and 76 respondents to the questionnaires, which were mailed to 1,200 names on a mailing list who had ordered books or other products related to paranormal phenomenon. So the group is a little skewed.
I would say it's a little skewed. All right.
There were 62% females. The mean age was 42. It did range from 16 to 84. The age distribution was nice, 22% under 25, 23% 25 through 39, 35% 40 through 59, and 21% 60 or older. So it did have a fairly wide span. Mm-hmm. So far, aside from a couple of problems with the survey group, I'm not entirely against the survey so far.
Okay. I'm assuming we're going to get to their findings here.
Yes. The majority of respondents, first off, more on the people. The majority of the respondents reported multiple paranormal and transcendent experiences. 52% of the people, so 52% of 120 people, reported more than 10 paranormal experiences.
More than 10?
More than 10.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Seems like a lot to me, but, I haven't had any, so
Yeah.
that's probably why I was not in the survey.
Well, I wonder about the gulf between those who have had no paranormal experiences and those who have had more than 5. Because, if you see Jesus in your toast, you tend to see Jesus everywhere.
Well, approximately 96% of the respondents who reported had at least one paranormal experience, and 83% had at least one transcendent experience.
Okay.
So, the people that, the more experiences, the more transformational it was on your life, was basically the finding. So the more experience, the more paranormal and transcendent experiences you had, the greater an effect it had on your life. It does not mention whether or not that effect had diminishing returns. How big are these effects if they just keep affecting you, and the more you have it, the more effect you have?
Sure, is 1,000 better than 100?
Right, that's
good say.
The most extreme changes were for spirituality-related items, such as a desire to achieve a higher consciousness, belief in life after death, and interest in spiritual or religious matters. So the biggest positive change on people's lives was trying to find more about the crazy crap that happened to them. So I discount that, because that doesn't seem to be necessarily a positive impact on people's lives.
Well, if it causes you to read a book, I guess that's good. It depends on which book you're reading.
In this case, it was probably one of those 1,200 people that bought books from the Institute for Parapsychology.
Yeah.
And parapsychology, that's just a word that drives me insane.
Okay.
Is that above psychology, beyond psychology? What does that word mean exactly?
Outside of psychology, basically.
That doesn't make any sense, because it seems to me that most of these things fall well into psychology.
Yeah. Well, if you study it with the mindset that there is this froofy bullshit that doesn't really exist, then I guess you have to account for that in your psychoanalytical reports.
Yeah.
And so I guess, yeah. Ultimately, the word, they slap para on so many different things.
And meta.
Meta and paranormal, parapsychological, paralegal. These things, this word, they love to apply it in this ghost and spiritual realm, just because we're not just psychologists. You're not psychologists, but we're studying this from a greater worldview, from the worldview of there being these ethereal spirits and ghosts and whatnot. So we put that word para in front of it to tell
Para
you
means
that.
for, right?
Para means outside.
Yeah, maybe so.
Yeah.
All right, well, a preponderance, their word, not mine, of positive responses were also found on well-being items such as feelings of happiness and well-being, sense of connection to others, optimism about the future, purpose or meaning for life, and motivation to maintain health. Although it seems odd to me that if the afterlife is so wonderful, why you would put so much effort into maintaining health.
Yeah.
Let's see. Now, when we move on to the conclusions, people who are actively interested in parapsychology have had experiences they interpret as paranormal or transcendent. That seems reasonable.
Sure.
They tend to report these experiences as being beneficial or enhancing their life or well-being. This seems to be the extent of it, the conclusions that the study finds. The present results are also similar to findings from near-death experience and religious experience, and suggest that different types of anomalous experiences may induce similar effects. weird stuff that you can't explain affecting you seems to profoundly affect people.
Yeah, well, that does make sense. But again, this is pretty much a self-selected group here. Those who purported to, in the first place, be affected by these things. Mm-hmm. So I'm saying that biases the data a little bit there.
Okay, and they actually admit that. In the conclusion, which it takes them pages and pages and pages of results on a self-selection study to come to, they believe that the present findings are reasonably representative of people who are actively interested in paranormal phenomenon. Okay. And who volunteer to participate in parapsychological research. Because they asked people who are actively interested if they would participate. So of those people that did both A and B, they came up with a group that was both A and B.
Right.
Which is, certainly revealing. They do say, though, that although this selected population is of interest in its own right, these findings, like the results of experiments using similarly recruited subjects, cannot be confidently extended to the general population. This population may be a self-selected group with unusually positive reactions to anomalous experiences. However, even with such a positive bias, the data may offer useful information about the relative prevalence of different positive effects and associated motivational factors, particularly for the population of people who volunteer for parapsychological research.
Okay.
So I saw this documentary about, 3 months ago, about aliens.
Okay.
And all the people in the documentary, it was in the 60s when aliens were cool, all the people who had experiences with aliens always came back and said how wonderful aliens were and how they were so fantastically impactful to their life.
Right.
Right after The Exorcist came out, there were a series of people reporting connection with the supernatural, be they the devil, ghosts, God, or what have you. They were all almost exclusively bad. It seems to me, whatever the trendy weird thing is, people will get a positive or negative reaction based upon the amount of information they have coming at them. So give it a couple more years with these supernatural experience, or those ones where the people's house was haunted and they caught it on video, some stupid movie where the supernatural is really scary, and do the study again. And I bet you come up with people that think the supernatural is a scary, horrible thing.
Right. I mean, that's just the cultural landscape really, really biases people's opinions on that, because the opinions come from nowhere.
The zeitgeist?
They come from a vacuum, except for what the cultural norm is. And, this paper and their justification, they concede a number of points, as you say. They concede that, this data may not be representative of the general population. And they don't, at least in your presentation of it, they don't seem to address whether or not there's any legitimacy.
No, they never, not once in the paper do they suggest that it is good or bad. There are a couple of points in the paper where they, in their language, they don't overtly state it, but in their language they imply that they know for a fact these things are true. But they never actually state that explicitly. They simply go over the data that they have. And to their credit, they do admit self-selected group.
Right. Well, the problem I have with it is it's the same thing, like if you look at, major religions that people have argued, okay, well, you can't prove the existence or non-existence or blah, 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 but it makes you a better person. I mean, this paper is essentially arguing that these people came out better.
Yes, they came out happier.
Sure. And that's fine. My question would be to the legitimacy of the experience, to the truth of the experience, just like I would ask with religion.
Or with exercise. People who exercise report being happier and healthier and a greater, higher sex drive. They sleep better. All these other things, which, that's fine. If there are a dozen ways to do this, and a lot of them are a load of crap, why don't you do the ones that are true and get the actual benefit along with the psychological benefit?
Right.
You get the sense of well-being from this, or from, exercising for, 2 hours a week.
Yeah.
If it's the same, the exercising will do something physical in addition to benefit your body.
Right. And, exercise, magnetic bracelets, paranormal stuff, religion. Yeah. And all of these things are reported anecdotally to be, Well, it seems like I'm better because of it.
Yeah.
Well, that's fine, but some of these things are actually true and some of them are not. And
even the ones that are true may not be as true as they are, considering that if people tell you you'll feel better from exercising, and you really know you need to be healthier so you exercise, tricking yourself into thinking you feel better, much like these people trick themselves into thinking they feel better, seems to be perfectly reasonable that both those things, I'm not sure exercise necessarily makes people happier, as it's been reported, because any number of things, religious experience, near-death experience, ghosts, all seem to make people feel better. So maybe just different stuff makes you feel better. Maybe just add more excitement to your life.
Well, at least with exercise, there's some, you can follow the chain back a little bit. You can talk about endorphins,
Right.
you can talk about adrenaline, you can talk about, these mood-altering neurotransmitters that they do see a rise in when you exercise. So at least there's something to hang your hat on. Mm-hmm. But,
well, psychology can directly influence, the chemicals in your brain.
this is true. This is true.
If you feel better because you saw ghosts, you probably have a rise in the neurotransmitters and the hormones in your brain.
So basically,
you probably really do feel better.
What you're saying is, and we can apply this to all the callers that we have today.
Yes.
If you have had an experience with any sort of paranormal activity, I would love it if you would allow me to stick a needle into your brain and pull out some of your neurochemicals, because that way we can analyze it and get some objective data.
Paul Whitmire is not a medical doctor. I repeat, not an MD. Do not let him stick a needle into your brain.
How hard could it be? Seriously, I mean, you have to drill a hole because of the skull.
Yeah, that's how hard it is. It's hard because you have to drill a hole through their skull. This is what you're suggesting.
I've done carpentry. I mean, it's basically the same thing.
It is basically, neurology, carpentry, 6 of one, half a chicken.
Orthopedic surgery is basically carpentry as well. So, and you know how I feel about doing
Orthopedic surgery really is basically carpentry. It's the most horrible thing that it's shocking. Never let your doctor explain to you the back surgery they're going to perform. Just trust them on it.
So,
never hear it.
I'll feel better after the drugs were off, right? Yes, okay. Don't tell me about it. Don't tell me.
The chisel, I don't want to know about the chisel or the grinder. No, just leave those things out.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, moving on here to
Thank you.
Just talking about what we're doing today is we're talking about ghosts and the paranormal. If Josh's primary source journal article didn't already tip you off to that, so I know we have a couple of callers who have ghost stories, so it should be pretty interesting. We have some opinions, and we want to hear from you guys. So if you want to call in, the number is 424-243-9589. So before we get into the whole ghosts and the paranormal thing, just a couple of things to bring up in terms of things we're doing and things that are happening in the world. Just as a quick note, Josh did mention in the introduction, Jessica Alquist was she was part of a lawsuit in order to get a prayer taken down out of her public school gymnasium, and she was successful in that.
And hallelujah, 15-year-old girls should all be this competent.
Yeah, seriously. Except for the fact that she's being significantly and severely bullied. She's getting death threats on Facebook now. All kinds of fun stuff.
Somebody actually put her address on the internet.
Yeah, isn't that lovely?
Which was really nice.
I don't think it was to send her flowers or anything like that.
I don't know. Maybe it was. People are a lot more loving than you give them credit for. Christians are a loving group.
And I wanted to point out about this because Josh and I talked about this in the past. The anti-bullying legislation that they passed, and I think it was Minnesota, and the anti-bullying legislation that has been proposed in a couple of other places that allow an exception for religious or moral beliefs.
Yeah, you can only bully people if your God told you can bully people.
Which means that all of these people bullying Jessica Alquist are protected.
Yes, they are.
Would be protected under this legislation. Even though a court ruled that she is absolutely in the right, that having the prayer up there in the public school gymnasium violates the separation of church and state and needs to come down. So, that's one thing. The other thing quickly to mention is that the Supreme Court, Josh and I had talked about Cheryl Parrich's case for a while. Cheryl Parrich was a school teacher and a minister at some sort of religious school there.
Yes.
And she apparently had sleep apnea. She needed to go on disability, and the school fired her. She sued the school because it was discrimination against her medical condition. And the school hung their hat on a ministerial exception. And the school lost the lawsuit and lost the first appeal and lost the second appeal. And I had commented on the podcast when I was talking about it back then that there's no way the Supreme Court is going to rule differently than the two appellate courts did. Yes, the Supreme Court unanimously ruled that ministerial exception applies, that she can't have her job back, that she can't be compensated, that it wasn't discrimination because of ministerial exception.
She went to a class that made her technically a minister, and though each week had 45 minutes or less of religious study that she supervised, still was technically a minister, and there is a, quote, ministerial exception. Unanimous. That's Kagan, that's Sotomayor, both Obama as appointees. Nope. Unanimous against.
Well, she took the class, she got a certificate, whole deal.
Yep.
Okay, but back to the topic here, talking about ghosts and the supernatural.
Oh, do you want to pick up Ann, Paul?
Sure. All right, so we're going to talk to our first caller here. This is Ann, who has two different experiences she wants to talk about.
Hello, Ann.
Hi.
You may want to speak up a little bit. You're a little quiet.
Oh, I don't know if I can speak too much louder. Is that all right?
I can hear you pretty well. Everybody just lean in and turn the volume up just a tiny bit for the next little bit. I think we'll be fine.
I turned you up a little bit, Ann, so hopefully we can hear you now.
Okay. I'll try and speak up.
Thank you.
Yeah, I've had two different experiences, and I kind of see what you guys were saying as far as the paranormal experiences being beneficial to the person.
Mm-hmm.
In one of those cases, I could agree with that. The other one happened, but really didn't mean anything to me personally. I was actually at a meeting for a club that I'm part of, and we were talking about a person who had passed in the club,
mm-hmm.
and we were talking about doing something memorial for her, and I really got the feeling that she was in the room and a certain part of the room, and I got the feeling that she was pleased with what we were proposing to do as a memorial for her.
What sort of feeling, I'm sorry, Ann, what sort of feeling did you get? Was it like inside? Was it like an emotional sensation? Was it tactile at all? What sort of feeling was it?
Yeah, it wasn't physical. It wasn't tactile. It was an emotional feeling. Just a pleasantness, a happy attitude.
Okay, and you got this toward the end of the discussion, like she was putting her stamp of approval on it?
Correct.
Okay, and that did that make you feel better about what you guys had done? I mean, did you feel? You said it connected somewhat with the journal article. Did you feel better about things, or is this the one that sort of was kind of indifferent, more or less?
This one was indifferent to me. I didn't know this person who had passed. I had never met her. She kind of founded the particular club. So I just knew that they were talking about her. I only had a name. I had never met her. And yet getting this feeling, let's say, didn't personally benefit me. And honestly, the group that I was with, I didn't feel comfortable sharing it with them. I never did tell anybody.
Well, and let me ask you a question. So you had this experience, you had this sort of internal sensation regarding this, and you weren't really, it doesn't sound like you were close-knit with this group. It doesn't sound like you really knew this person very well, if at all. What do you think, in your own words, what do you think happened? I mean, are you stating here right now that you do believe that it was an extra or paranormal experience? Do you believe that this person's ghost was giving you some sort of a message through emotion, or do you have a different explanation for it?
No, I would say that. I would say that. Yes, it was. Yes, some kind of message. I don't know how to say it any other way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, so is this before you, and you talked about two experiences, so I want to get to the other one here, but before you had this experience, or if the other one was before you had that experience, did you find yourself are you the sort of person who's prone to believe these things to begin with, or did these experiences transform your position on whether or not ghosts exist and are actually participating in the world?
Actually, this is not something that I usually believe. It's not something I've been brought up to believe. The second one, which was much more personally beneficial to me, did really make me believe more that there are spirits in this world.
Well, why don't you
even though the body has passed.
Why don't you describe the second experience then, so we know what you're talking about? Because it sounds like the first experience being the one where you didn't really know the person. What was your second experience with the supernatural here?
Well, the second was not with people, but with pets, animals. Let's say it was in the morning, and I had gotten up to turn off the alarm and went to sit back on the bed, and there was a dog sitting by my bed.
Oh, wait, hang on.
And
You had a physical, or at least a visual representation?
that is correct.
Okay.
Of a dog.
That is correct.
Okay.
Yes, of a dog.
Oh.
And so much so to the fact that I talked to this dog.
Okay.
Yes. And I patted it on the head. And of course, you're right in between that awake and sleep time. And I patted it on the head, and I don't remember exactly what I said. But I remember there was actually two dogs. There was a larger dog closer to me with a more of a lighter glow to him, and then a dog behind him that was smaller and darker. And I went back to bed. I woke up in the morning, and I asked my partner, did you hear me talking this morning? Did you hear me? He said he didn't, but I know that I talked to this apparition of an animal. It wasn't until later that and of course this is me personally putting things together,
Sure.
that I had been, that I had been reading stories about animals in the afterlife, and had been particularly upset about a dog that we had to give up in childhood.
And you were reading stories about animals in the afterlife just previous to this experience? Is that what
Correct.
you're saying? Okay. All right.
Correct.
And,
Correct, yes.
Have you ever heard of morning hallucinations? Are you familiar with those at all? Do you understand?
Yes, I have. Yes, I do. Yes, I know exactly. Yes, I know what you're talking about.
Okay, so on a regular basis for me, and I'm really not the best morning person in the world, my alarm clock seems to manifest itself in my head as a marching band that actually, parades around my room. I've had a discussion with the conductor about how I should be allowed to sleep for 11 minutes longer. This has actually happened to me on more than one occasion. Now, I know that after I wake up and that experience kind of dissolves, that I was in this half-wake, half-dream state. And I'm fully aware that it was simply a trick that my brain's playing on me or some sort of hallucination. Why would you think your experience with the dogs, especially given the fact that you were kind of researching this beforehand, why do you think this wasn't just generated from your brain? Do you have anything that would substantiate why that is?
I know what you're talking about. I have done the same thing where I've been in that in-between state, and I have pictured myself getting up, getting a shower, getting my makeup on, and then, the alarm goes off again after after I've hit the snooze, and I'm, I do the, oh shoot, I really haven't gotten in the shower yet, I need to get going. That was different than this.
How was it different?
How was it different? I was actually doing these actions. I wasn't dreaming about petting this dog. I wasn't dreaming about talking with this animal. I actually did these things.
Can you describe the order? I'm sorry, Ann. Can you describe the order of events? Did you lay back down, or did you automatically get up and proceed with your day from there, or did you lay back down and go back to sleep for a little while?
I went back. Well, I'm not a morning person, so I have to keep my alarm clock across the room, let's say, in order for me to get up.
I'm familiar with this.
I used to have that
bed,
too.
I'm going back to sleep. So I got up, went across the room, hit the snooze button, and was about to crawl back into bed when I saw this apparition of a couple of dogs.
No, I'm sorry. Did it look like an actual dog, or was it translucent like in the movies? Did it have the tactile? I mean, did it feel like a dog? Did it have all the sensory input, or was there something seemingly supernatural? My question is, could you have mistaken it for an actual dog, or was there something that made it clear it was not an actual dog?
You don't have two dogs, do you?
No. So
I do not have two dogs. No, I do have a dog presently. It is a small 5-pound Maltese, not a big yellow dog like this one was.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Anne, are you there? Oh, sorry, you cut out for a second.
I'm here.
Go ahead, sorry.
Oh, sorry. I moved around. Yeah, I have a small Maltese dog, only 5 pounds, so much different than this larger, like, light golden dog that I had seen.
Okay, well, you know, so we're sitting over here just kind of, contemplating your story and what you've told us here. Now, there's a couple of things, and you'll forgive us if we just, I just have a couple of questions regarding, so you're reading a book about animals and the afterlife, and you have this sort of lucid dreaming experience, which you're stating was an actual experience that you had, and the actual dogs were there, and you interacted with them. I mean, this does seem to me to be a bit of an extraordinary claim. I mean, would you at least agree that what you're saying does kind of fall outside the norm of everyday average experience?
I would agree with that. Mm-hmm. The book that I was reading, though, was not just stories of like animals in the afterlife. Mm-hmm. It was a book of animal stories that just like hero dogs or hero pets. The dog that barked and told the family that they had to get out of the house because of carbon monoxide poisoning.
Right.
So not. They weren't like all spirit stories.
I hate to go back to this, but I asked a moment ago how this dog was different from an actual dog, and the reason I did was there's two things that I have a bit of a question about. First off,
okay,
if I had seen a ghost dog, a translucent dog, or something which boggles the mind or causes me to rethink things, it would probably cause me to go into a much greater awakened state. I would probably go, wait a second, there's a translucent dog. I would get some modicum of energy or adrenaline from the focused consciousness. Or two, if I saw a dog that didn't belong in my house, the same thing would happen. So the fact that you went back to sleep, did you get a sense of calm or relax from it? Or because it would have alerted me more.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say is there was no, and I can see what you're saying about a strange dog in my house, and yes, that would concern me, but no, it was a very calming, like peaceful feeling, very, very peaceful, very happy, very warm, pleasant experience.
Well, and these experiences that you have, they are anecdotal. You're presenting them to us here, and we have very little to kind of go on to either substantiate or refute, because these are your experiences, and these are things that have happened to you. Now, the only thing I really want to ask, just to kind of wrap this up here, is you've repeatedly described or stated that these are different than a dream experience, or they couldn't be explained by any of these sort of other things that we're offering as suggestions. So you really, your position at this point is that there is no other possible explanation for your experiences than for there to be this supernatural world that exists. Is that correct? Am I overstating your position there?
No, I believe you're reading that correctly. Yes. Uh-huh.
Okay. Well, I would say that you've had this sort of special experience. I don't know if the evidence is there, not for your particular case, but it just seems like if there were this spirit world that existed, it would come across in more fronts than just for you to have a couple of magically appearing dogs. I don't want to discount your experience at all. Your story does not necessarily persuade me to believe that there is this afterlife thing.
I actually have a different question. If you don't have a specific response to Paul there, I just interrupted to not give you a chance.
Okay,
I apologize.
well, hang on.
Yep, go ahead.
Okay, hang on just a moment. The one thing that I didn't say was that the next morning, as I'm thinking about this, I'm driving to work.
Mm-hmm.
I realized that these are the two dogs that have passed in my life. The large golden dog was a dog, Missy, that I had to give up in childhood, and it took me a bit to figure out the small dog behind, but that was a black mutt that I used to have, and his name was Licorice.
Licorice.
And it was the two dogs. Yes, Licorice, black Licorice.
That's nice.
Well,
it was the two dogs that I had that have passed on.
And I would say that when I was describing the story of having the morning hallucination of the marching band in my bedroom, the marching band was actually clothed in the uniform of the University of Buffalo, because that's where I went to school and I saw their uniforms. So I just think that if your brain is developing these things and presenting them for you, it's going to, do that based upon previous information that you have. You have these archetypes of dogs in your head from your past. It seems most likely. I mean, it would seem actually I would be more interested in it if they weren't dogs that you are already familiar with. So, but that's again.
Okay, but why would dogs that I didn't know come to visit me?
Why would dogs that you did know come to visit you?
Well, and I'm glad you asked that, because it had disturbed me very recently before that the older dog that we had to get rid of, that we had to take to the SPCA. And it had upset me greatly recently at that time period that the dog, I don't know, the dog had been sad, like waiting for us to come back and get him. We were his only family. And well, I know they're going to come back and get me. And having thought that, I was very upset previous to this. And I believe that this dog, as well as the other one, came to tell me that things are okay, that he's in the afterworld, that he's happy, and that I don't need to be upset about him anymore.
Oh, this dog was put to sleep?
I don't know.
Okay.
But we were kind of guessing that.
All right. Well, so the dogs came to console you.
Correct.
Doesn't it seem?
And that kind of goes back to what you guys were saying earlier, that isn't it convenient that a lot of these things that people say happen are there for their benefit, as in this case to console me.
Doesn't it seem
this visit
as likely that perhaps your guilt, because you sound like you felt guilty about this, your guilt for having given up this dog because of whatever circumstances, having given up this dog, that your guilt was you were trying to find a way to alleviate your own guilt, and reminiscing about the dogs that you had lost and the loved ones that were gone. It seems that would very nicely alleviate the guilt that you felt, and that could be a way that your mind was trying to give you an out, because very often you do things that you're put in a situation for, and you're stuck and you have to do them, but you still feel guilty about it. You still feel like something bad, you've done something bad, and you want to find a way to extinguish the sense of guilt that you have, and your mind is ready to help you. So your mind presents this concept, this idea of your loved dogs, the creatures that you cared very much for, being happy and approving of what you've done. It's the idea of thinking of your grandfather. My grandfather would approve of what I did here, even though I'm kind of on the fence about it emotionally. That I've got this other figure that has come in and has granted a seal of approval, and therefore I can feel a little less guilty about this thing that I may have been forced into due to circumstance.
Sure. I mean, it's the John Edwards situation. What you're talking about is, some, whether it's your grandfather or a dog from your past or whatever it is, he's come to tell you that he loves you and it's okay, and he forgives you and all of those things. I mean, do you believe, for example, Anna, I just a couple more questions. We're going to let you go here, but we really appreciate the call.
Okay. Sure.
John Edwards, for example, or who's that other guy, James von Prague?
Yeah.
Do you believe that they're actually communicating with ghosts in the afterlife?
Do I? Yes, I do.
Okay. So, I'm sorry, Josh, go ahead.
I was going to say, how long have you had that belief? Is it from this particular experience that turned you around? Or did you kind of think that maybe it was likely before, but you didn't know and this has solidified you? Or did you always at least more or less accept it and this is just one expression of proof of the belief that you had already?
I would say that I thought there might have been a possibility of it before this. Mm-hmm. And yes, that this experience kind of solidified it.
All right. Well, you had to bring up dogs. That's like the weakness for Josh and I is going to be dogs and cats and pets of all sorts. So
yeah. I actually have a cat that if I believed in the supernatural, I'd believe this cat came back to me because he was by far the noblest creature I have ever known. Mm-hmm. And I stand behind that. He was an amazing creature, and he was absolutely fantastic. And if anybody was going to come visit me after they had passed, it would have been him. And as much as I would,
well, I hope he does.
I'm sorry?
I hope he does.
Yeah, thank you. As much as I would like to do that, I would be concerned that my own desire for that would cloud that. I know Paul and I recently have both read the book, The Invisible Gorilla. Mm-hmm. Which is about how perception alters things and about how looking back at perception from the past, you rebuild ideas in your head. So, it seems like without something else, especially something that was felt in a near dreamlike state, that you went back to sleep. It sounds a lot like, just what Paul was talking about, that you have little mini hallucinations, and this one struck you as, something that maybe you believe. If you believe that the dogs you had owned would approve of this, it would make you feel a lot better about what you had done. It would ease your conscience. It would allow you to participate in day-to-day living without that vulture of guilt sitting above you. It seems very convenient that's sort of how that plays out. Yeah, I mean, it's.
I can see that. And I kind of knew that probably would be the stance that you would take, that you would take on that.
Well, I don't think that us and you are going to come to an agreement on this. If you do feel that these things were actual supernatural experiences and you're basing that upon your own anecdotal evidence, we really can't touch you on that. You experience what you did experience. The only thing I want to just, our position remains unchanged because everything you have described, at least to us, can be explained through the magical, wonderful things that our brains do to us every day. Just like John Edwards and James von Prague stuff can be explained through simple cold reading. I mean, in every case, what you're talking about is somebody coming from beyond the grave to come back to assuage fears, to make you feel better, and to allay some of the guilt or negative experiences that you have. When a loved one or a loved animal comes back and tells you where the gold's buried, then we can have a discussion. But until that point, I think it really is just a way to make yourself feel better. And I understand that you believe what you believe, and again, we can't tread on that so much. We're just, we're glad that you called in. I think it's interesting to hear these things, and I'm glad we could talk about it for a little bit today.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, very much so.
All right. Well, thanks so much for giving us a call. Hopefully, keep listening in the future. Maybe a call back about something else. It'll be a good time.
Thanks a lot.
Okay.
All
Okay.
right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sam.
Bye.
Ghost stories. Ghost dogs, though.
No,
So-
did I tell you about when I was young, my sister died, and a year, maybe 2 years later, I felt this cold sensation, this cold feeling in my back hall, and I don't know why I did this. Perhaps for attention, perhaps for something. I told my friends that I had a cold spot in my back hall that I thought was my sister trying to communicate with me. And I even held on to that for a little while, even after I realized that the back door didn't have any insulation on the bottom.
Yeah.
No, I'm in all seriousness. This was a weird emotional thing for me because I had this schism in my head that I told people this, and I didn't want to go back from what I'd said. Even though my brain had kind of figured out what happened, it was a painful, a very peculiar experience, especially when I thought about it even more. My sister really never spent a lot of time in the back hall. I'm not sure why she would have been in the back hall. Didn't feel anything in her bedroom, nothing like that. But it was just this idea, and I thought the idea was really great. It was really good, even after I'd completely discounted it. I still presented this to other people as though it were true, and it's something that's troubled me for years. Why I did that?
Well, I think that's one of the reasons why these things propagate, because they're always the right answer is kind of the best way I can phrase that. My dogs came back from heaven to tell me that they were cool with me. It's always, and they made me feel better. I think, one of the stronger points that you made, Josh, was the fact that she did just go back to sleep afterwards, leading me to believe that she probably wasn't exactly all the way awake. And again, you and I don't know the circumstances of what happened or anything like that, but I don't know. My opinion really does not change much on the evidence that was presented to us here.
I know. If anybody else has any firsthand experiences, we can compare and contrast the information, find out if there's validity or even a similarity between experiences. That would be fantastic. That's something that we would like to broach. All
right. Well, we should move on. We got probably about another 45 minutes worth of show to get through here.
No.
Okay. So current events. So we're going to talk a little bit about some stuff that Josh and I have found in the news. I'm going to start that off with an article from the Chicago Tribune. And that article is entitled, "Tennessee Town Hopes Ghost Search Can Scare Up Cash." And this pisses me off. This pisses me off a lot. So there's this town, Harriman, Tennessee. They have apparently this 121-year-old building, which is a former jail. And it is supposedly haunted by dark entities.
Okay. Well, it's a jail. That would be dark entities.
So last week, by unanimous vote, a 6-person city council agreed to let Ghost Hunters of Southern Tennessee, their acronym, by the way, GHOST. Very nice.
That is a good move.
They want to show footage that they caught during a night spent dwelling inside the city-owned building. And so they're putting together an organization to consider plans to conduct paid tours of the building. And this is the town itself. This is the town council putting together a proposal to conduct tours. And the reason why is because of this ghost group who found, quote, found an exceptional amount of paranormal activity there, end quote, said the mayor. So the mayor of Harriman, Tennessee is like, yep, I talked to them ghost hunters and they have credible evidence. We should start, trying to get money off the people. And money, how much money? Well, the plan is to charge ghost tourists $299 for an all-night visit.
Or I hope it includes dinner.
$30 per person for a 3-hour tour.
A 3-hour tour.
Exactly. So the mayor's name is Chris Mason. He says, Mason says he does not necessarily believe in ghosts, but, quote, but I do not believe in them either. Okay. So this is just, okay. So this town, Harriman, Tennessee, they need money like all towns need money. That's what they're doing. I mean, a lot of towns, like small towns like this, seem to make a lot of money if they're on the path from somewhere from point A to point B. They make a lot of money by pulling over speeders and stop sign runners and things like that. There's a couple of towns in upstate New York here where if you're going from like here to any place else, and you know the thruway is 65 or 55, and then you hit a town, all of a sudden it drops down to 35. You're going 36. They pull you over and give you a ticket. The reason why is they want all that out of town money coming into the town.
Actually, this reminds me. At Christmas, we did an episode where I discussed St. Nicholas, and the reason St. Nicholas got as much fame as he did is that a small town in Italy decided that they would go and they would raid his tomb and steal his body parts.
Oh, nice.
And use them as relics as a tourist incentive to get people to come to their town to come see the relics of St. Nicholas. They didn't have any saints from their town, so they stole saints from another town to get people to come look at the relics. So it's not that different. It's not a new thing.
Is this a thing where you're asking me out of the blue? You're like, what happened? What's it called when you steal a saint's arm?
Yes. When I said, what happens when you steal the body parts of a saint? What do you call?
What the hell are you talking
What do you call the body parts of a saint? And yes, it was relics was the answer I was looking for, Paul.
Relics. Okay. But yeah, I'm bothered by this because this town, this mayor and this town council in particular, are substantiating this bullshit in order to bring tourism into their town and garner a profit from people outside. The town needs money. I understand that. But you're substantiating these fables, myths, and ghost stories. And again, we go back to what we were talking about with the paper, what we were talking about with the caller, which is, it's fine if these things make you feel better. If people go to this town, spend their $300 and have an actual legitimate, scary experience, well, maybe they got their money's worth. But you're propagating untruths. And, just
or at least ththings which have not been proven true.
Right. So, let's talk about what they actually found in this place and the reason why they think it's haunted enough to charge $300 a night. They recorded, electromagnetic fields, with a piece of equipment called I'm not making this up, a Ghost Meter Pro.
Oh, Ghost Meter Pro. Yeah, well, I've got one of those.
So I'm going to talk about electromagnetic fields a little bit later on. They state that they actually caught a photo of what they believe is a full body apparition down in the basement. Photos not included with the article. And then there was a voice. The voice confessed, it muttered, quote, that building, everything in it wants to talk, wants to say hi, wants to have communication with somebody. Wait, no, that's not right. This article said, one voice, he said, even confessed to murder. Quote, that building, everything in it wants to talk, wants to say hi, wants to have communication with somebody. All right, so I apologize for the badly placed punctuation on that, but what he's saying is they're hearing voices confessing to murder, and they're saying that the building wants to talk. And lastly, they say, the building is occupied by wraiths.
Wraiths?
They say wraiths. They do not say ring wraiths. They say wraiths.
So not ghosts, spirits, apparitions, specters, or any of the like, but wraiths specifically.
Wraiths, a term a lot of people wouldn't know outside of my industry, Rulin said. They are darker entities, once human souls. So, okay, so if this article would have presented itself, if this town would have presented itself as saying, we got this spooky building, and we don't have a lot of explanation for what's going on in it, you want to come stay here and check it out, that'd be cool. That would be one thing. But to substantiate the $300 a night charge by saying, well, we've done the research, and there's wraiths. Specifically, there's wraiths, and there's spirit entities confessing to murder.
Well, there's like 36 different kinds of angels, and there's like 15 different kinds of demons. I mean, they catalog these things. I've never seen any of them. Never seen photos or documentation, but they like to catalog.
Yeah, they
really and categorize all these different things. And so, I say must have been wraiths.
So, when you state that, you're adding a legitimacy to this. You're saying it's no longer open for discussion. It is simply that it is true. This place is occupied with ring wraiths and Frodo and the whole deal, and we want to profit off it.
Maybe Dementors.
I say shame on this small town, and I don't like the fact that they're propagating this bullshit in order to make a profit. I mean, pull over some damn speeders, okay? So that's my news article. You want to talk about yours, Josh, and then we'll go ahead. We have a couple more calls lined up, but let's try and get through the news section first here.
Mine is fairly brief. It's a simple article from BBC News London, January of 2012, so just a couple days ago. It is Witch Torturer Trial. Sister describes brother's beating. Now, this has nothing to do with ghosts.
Okay.
But it does have to do with the supernatural in that it has to do with witches.
Well, witches are super.
Yeah. I'll just sum it up. Christy Bamou, 15, from Paris, was found dead in a bath in a flat in Newham, East London on Christmas Day 2010. She was killed, beaten to death horribly, for being a witch.
Okay.
Yep. Religion doesn't hurt anybody. So it's nice and innocent.
Nowadays, like this is current. This is
This is last year. This is 1 year ago. This happened.
This is like 1642. This is last
beaten
year.
to death for being a witch.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
She and her brother suffered over 200 blows with a hammer and an iron bar. Her sister, the one that's on trial right now for doing this.
Her sister? Okay.
Her sister did it, yes. Joined in with a stick, and they beat these two people to death. They beat them to death for practicing witchcraft.
Were they? Okay, go ahead. Are they practicing witchcraft? Are they practicing Wicca?
There is no clarification because we don't have the people who are practicing to say. All we have are the people that committed the offense, and they were silent. The initial interview with the police, when they were arrested, they said witchcraft, and that's the extent of it. Then the lawyer got in and said, "You should really stop talking now." So that's what we have. Two people were beaten to death, and I don't know if you can imagine being beaten to death. It seems horrible.
No, I cannot imagine being beaten to death.
I've been in a position where I've been beat upon, and it's really unpleasant, and if that continued on to the point where I died, I might come back from the dead as a ghost and haunt people as some sort of wraith. It's absolutely horrible. They were beat to death for being witches, for practicing witchcraft. The sister did say in her initial interview, it was as if they were obsessed by witchcraft, and then it became absolutely unbearable. That's it. Beaten to death for being witches.
I thought my news article was disgusting, but I think that wins.
I know there's a lot of cases of this happening in Africa. They have witch hunters that come in and do all kinds of terrible things.
Yeah.
But that's one of those backward continents where they don't take AIDS vaccines because they think it's horrible, or they don't do it. Whatever. This is in London. The people were from France. This is the first world.
Yeah.
People are beaten to death for practicing witchcraft.
Yeah, what the hell is going on here? I mean, that's absolutely absurd. And I'm against religion. Josh is against religion.
I have not beaten anybody to death for practicing, Seventh-day Adventism.
Right.
It hasn't happened. Hadn't even occurred to me.
Not even the people who knock on the door at like 9 in the morning on a Sunday.
Yep, not even Jehovah's Witnesses, and they can be annoying. Nope, not them.
Yeah, I just making your point with a stick, or making your disagreement with a stick, and
delegitimizes your position.
No matter what.
When you resort to violence, my guess is you ran out of arguments because you're wrong.
Yeah, if you beat Nazi skinheads to death with an iron bar, I'm gonna think you're a dick.
Well, I guess it all depends on who you are from my position, but okay.
Yeah. Well, at any rate, it's just, wow. Okay. All right. Well, let's, hopefully Colleen with her ghost experience maybe she can move us to a lighter area. Let's see. So, Colleen, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
You're not going to tell me about somebody being beat to death with a stick, are you?
Okay. Josh, I'm flabbergasted by your story, and now I feel like my poofy ghost experience.
No, that's what we want. That's what we want. Trust me, that's much better.
Right.
Yeah, you need to take it in a different direction. So what do you got?
Right. Okay. So I heard Anne's story, and I get those, and I've had an experience similar to that, and also completely different than that. Now, I believe in ghosts, not necessarily to a fault. I do believe they can be disproven, and I believe there's other reasons. Sometimes, most times,
Well, let me stop you there, Kelly. And I'm sorry, but you just before we even get out of the gate here, you said you believe in ghosts, not necessarily to a fault. Is that what you said?
Right.
What does that mean?
Right. Well, I believe that in most cases, when people believe they're seeing something of the supernatural or of a passed-on spirit, it probably is not that.
Okay. All right.
There's probably a legitimate scientific reason that they're seeing what they're seeing.
So,
or it could be, an auditory or visual hallucination, or in a dream state like you guys were talking about earlier.
So what you're saying is that ghost experiences, for the most part, can be explained, but there are some maybe that don't fall under the explanations that make sense. Would that be fair?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Go ahead, sir.
All right. So when I was a small child, I had an experience where in my bedroom, I saw a girl at the end of my bed. When I would wake up, I would see her standing at the end of my bed. And this went on for probably about a month every night when I was around 8. And then one night, saw her with an older female figure, and then she never came anymore. I didn't recognize the little girl or the older woman. It felt to me like they'd found each other at the time, but I was very young. And I guess that kind of put me on a path of believing in, weird, these unexplained supernatural experiences.
Okay.
In that case, I can see now that it was just a dream state that went a little bit of awry, because I've had other dreams that repeated themselves on multiple occasions. So, not quite sure if that's legitimate ghost story.
Well, you said,
but it felt real.
You said you were very young. Can you give us a number on that? Were you 3? Were you 8?
No, she said 8.
Oh, did you say about 8? I apologize. Right. Okay. So did this experience, you said this happened for about a month with the little girl, and then after a while there was an older woman who showed up, and then the whole thing kind of ended, correct?
Right. Well, she only came one night. The older woman came one night, and then it stopped.
As if the little girl was waiting for the old woman, then the old woman showed up, and the whole situation was resolved.
Yeah.
Did you experience this little girl at the same time every night? Was it when you went to bed? Was it when you woke up? Was it in the middle of the night?
I think she said when she went to bed.
It was in the middle of the night.
Okay.
Yeah, it was in the middle of the night, and I would wake up. Oh. She'd be at the edge of my bed. I never felt any malevolence. It was almost peaceful. I wasn't worried about her. And then I'd go back to sleep. And it would be over.
Well, you already kind of backpedaled away from it by saying that you thought maybe this isn't a legitimate experience. Maybe there is some justification in terms of dreams and stuff like that. I know you had another story I want to get to. I'll just to put a bow on that, I would say this is yet another one where somebody wakes up to these experiences, which I immediately call into question. I think you have as well. So you had either if you have a comment about that or if you want to move on to your next one, you have the floor there. So where would you like to go?
Okay. Well, I had experiences in a house in Buffalo, where it was just experiences that I just didn't feel could be explained in other ways.
Okay.
Whenever we lived in very old houses.
As a lot of houses are in Buffalo.
Right. And me and my roommate both heard these things on a regular occasion. There were footsteps on the staircase every night around the time when we'd be going to bed before we fell asleep. Heavy footfalls, like a man's footstep, all over the stairs. And the stairs would squeak in the same places they always squeak when you walk up and down them. So much so that we would go check to make sure nobody'd broken into the house. I would see, especially in the upstairs apartment, there was definitely I would see shadows. Shadows are a little, you're never sure if it's just the light playing with something, but
sure.
Shadows of male figures. There seemed to be a presence, along with the footsteps that happened almost every night, where me and my roommate downstairs could both hear them, where we would confirm with each other that it was just the steps on the stairs, and it wasn't anything more. In addition to the back house there was a front house that her uncle lived in, and we eventually moved into the bottom apartment as well, where we had experiences where we would hear her uncle's cell phone go off upstairs. We heard his cell phone go off, his big carriage door open, which was a big loud door, and close, and then what sounded like him moving across the floor like he was going to come down. And after about 10 minutes and he didn't come down, we called up to him, and he was like, I've been sleeping. What are you talking about? My phone's on silent. Okay. And this was while we were wide awake, like in the middle of the night, like in the middle of the evening, 8 o'clock-ish probably. Multiple times we heard sets of coins hitting the floor. Well, that's what it sounded like, was lots of coins hitting the floor, and then you'd come out and there'd be nothing. Loud crashes, then you come out, there's nothing.
Okay.
Lots of those things happen in those houses.
You threw a lot of stuff at us here.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Well, no, that's perfectly all right. What area of Buffalo was this? Do you remember?
Downtown in the west side.
Okay. How close are the houses together?
Very close.
Okay.
Like in the backyard.
You know, I'm going to offer an explanation for about 90% of what you just said, and you're not going to like it. So let me just start there. Old houses are made of, you know, like all houses, are made of varying materials, made of wood, made of steel nails, made of plastics and brick and plaster and a whole bunch of different things, which expand and contract at different rates. Now, old houses creak. Old houses make noise all the time, sometimes a substantial amount of noise.
And humans are pattern seekers. We try to figure out what noises are and put them in categories and store that information as accurate. That's one of the things that we do.
Now, that it doesn't account for everything. It doesn't account for the cell phone. It doesn't account for the coins. But I did note something interesting in your description of the coins, which was we heard a bunch of coins drop. Well, at least that's what it sounded like to me, making me wonder about the legitimacy of your actual description. I mean, with Josh's point that we're pattern seeking, you kind of latch onto, that was a sound. It was a metal sound. It sounded maybe like coins. And so now you've kind of rewritten your own brain to say.
Right, intelligent humans. I mean, that's what we do is we find things and we, to alleviate our curiosity, to make things make sense, we categorize them. That's like, the people that hear that the voices in the static, they hear the voices because they're thinking and their brain can find the pattern. So it stores it as if that happened. So a noise that sounds a little like that can easily be put into play as being that in your brain. And then once it's stored that way, if you hear it again, it reinforces that.
Well, and that was the coin thing. It was actually, there were 3 people who heard it, and we all agreed that that's what it sounded like. But, you know, it sound like things, and I completely agree with your pattern point.
Sound like things. I agree with that statement.
Were they coins on wood? Were they coins on linoleum? Were they coins on carpet? How did they sound?
It happened on multiple occasions, and in a few different rooms. One was carpet, and one was wood.
Okay. In the building that the studio is in here, there's an old rickety set of stairs going down to the basement, which has a cement floor, and it's so old, in fact, that there are random nails falling out of the stairs, and I've heard them hit the concrete and make a metally, clangy sound. So, again, could be coins, could be, the three people agreeing that it sounds like coins doesn't necessarily sell me very much, because what was that? I think it was coins. Yeah, I think it was coins too, becomes it was coins.
Or the fact that humans are pattern seekers and we're all the same species. We all have similar experiences. It wouldn't be all that far outside the norm for us all to hear something and think it, because maybe it did sound like that. Almost perfectly like that. I could see everyone thinking that was that, and that settles it. Let me ask you something. You said you've always believed to some degree. Why did you initially believe in the possibility of ghosts? What made you believe that ghosts were likely?
I think it's coming from a place where my parents were open-minded thinkers. They weren't, and I loved horror films and ghost stories when I was little. So it probably comes from that. just in the beginning was, it was nice to, have this idea that this other paranormal existence. And what's funny is, Paul, your article, I love ghost tours. And I know they're hokey, and I know that almost all of them are fake. But you know what? If that town can get people to pay $300 to come stay in their hotel, maybe they can make themselves have an experience. And it's awesome.
Well, let me ask you a question about that.
I will go on and mute.
Let me ask you a question about that. Would you be willing to go if you knew that it was just an amusement park ride?
If I knew it was just an amusement park ride, yes, but then I would have to have a guarantee.
What do you mean a guarantee?
A guarantee of something happening. I mean, I wouldn't just go stay at a hotel.
Oh, so your level of skepticism is or at least in terms of how entertained you're going to be, is lowered by the fact that it's purported to be real. Right. Okay. All right. I was just trying to get a clarification. The reason why I asked that is because there's people like, this is like the third time I'm bringing this up today, but James Van Praagh and John Edwards. And then there are people like Jamie Ian Swiss and Banachek and a bunch of different Vegas mentalists who do the exact same thing as those psychic otherworld reader type people, except for they start off all of their shows by saying, none of this is real. I'm lying to you. And, people enjoy the shows to the same level. In fact, those are some of the people I want to go see. And I know I've convinced Josh that he needs to see some of these performances. And they do talk about how they were worried that if they told people they were lying, that the audience wouldn't like it as much. And they found that isn't the case. So,
fun.
What was that?
Still just as fun.
Yeah, and that would be my point. I would, if it's $300 to stay in a hotel, in a creepy hotel, and maybe get a dinner, get a show, get a whole thing, then there you go. Maybe that's worth your money. My problem, I think our problem, is lying to people, is propagating the myth.
Not only that, is it continues to propagate the myth even more so, because once you've shelled out $300, if you don't get a show, there's two kinds of people. There's the kind of person that says, this is a scam, you people should go to hell, and gets very angry. I'm going to say that's probably a minority. Most people will justify the expense by saying that they got something.
Yeah, and
that I'm not just an idiot that shelled out $300 to stay at a hotel for no good reason. There was a weird feeling. There was a strange vibe. The walls had a sort of an intangible sort of a sensation that came over me, and so on. Mm-hmm. They do this to justify the fact that they spent the $300.
Yeah, what you're talking about is hypnotism. They're about the same thing. When you go to a hypnotist and they do shows like that and they pull someone up on stage and put them in a trance and tell them to act like a chicken, they act like a chicken because they're supposed to. Whether or not hypnotism actually works or is real is incidental. The people act like a chicken because there's 300 people watching you, and you're going to follow the rules. And it's the same thing with the town where you have this, $300 a night hotel stay. You're gonna follow the rules. You're gonna leave, and you're gonna tell everyone that it was great. It was worth my. There was ghosts, and it was great.
Yeah, the reason I asked initially about why you believed in ghosts, Colleen, is well, my mother believed in angels, kinda. Sorta, I guess. That kind of belief. And it never occurred to me that they were real. It never even dawned on me that it would be real. So if somebody had, even when I was, above the age of reason, so by 10 or 11, somebody had suggested they had an experience with an angel, my skepticism alarm would have gone off. Mm-hmm. Even though, my mother had professed a belief in the supernatural, at least in the form of angels, but only to a certain degree. And I didn't know anybody that actively believed in it. And I'm always curious about how people accept certain beliefs, where they come from. Because I know there's a cultural zeitgeist about the supernatural. There's general acceptance. They moved on to a better place, or that's that person talking to you from beyond, giving you advice or what have you. I'm always curious as to how these things come about, that it sounds reasonable, even without, like, you've had a first-hand experience of something, and, you categorize it as best you can. You put it into the box of, this would fit in a ghost box, so that's fine. But how you end up with the ghost box to begin with has always fascinated me. I've never had a ghost box or an angel box or even a God box or a I don't know, a telekinesis or a telepathy box. I've never had these things that I could put information into because I've just never had the category in my brain. That's why I'm very curious about how these categories are invented, how people invent them, because I believe in chairs. Even if I hadn't seen a chair in 20 years, I've seen chairs before. You know, that's sort of my thing.
That when I was really, really young, probably 4, was the first time my aunt showed me Nightmare on Elm Street.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not a great parenting or babysitting practice.
Well, you
but,
know.
I loved it because I'm a freak. I think maybe it's just because I, at a very young age, was exposed to the ghost box.
Mm-hmm.
And so immediately when I had those experiences, it might have just been a dream, but when I was young, I put it into the box of, oh, that's what that is, because I know about these things because I've seen them on television.
Well, I think it's interesting that we are, in general, and I'm not picking on you specifically, Colleen, but we're willing to accept paranormal stuff. We're willing to accept the afterlife stuff and heaven and hell and eternity and all of that stuff. But we're not as willing to accept that our brains are really powerful and can play tricks on us and we see patterns. I think that's the thing that most people, that's the leap that most people are afraid to jump to. Oh, it's my brain. I'm having a dream. It seems real, but I'm having a dream. Oh, it's my brain putting together those sounds I hear of a creaky house and calling it a ghost. We're afraid to do that. We're perfectly comfortable with going, it's a spirit.
Well, because if we believe that what we're hearing is actually something our brain is creating, or if what we're seeing is something our brain is creating, doesn't that make us crazy? And we're not crazy.
Josh, you have any comments on
that? Yes, that does seem to be the case, except for the fact that all the research that's been done into psychology, perception, memory, recall, those things, you don't see anything that you see. Everything that you see, you've just made up in your brain. The things that are actually right in front of you. There's an old saying, actually I think it comes primarily from a Arthur Conan Doyle story where Sherlock Holmes deduces who the villain is by seeing him walk away. Because, as Sherlock says, a man can disguise his face, he can't disguise his walk. That is to say, more specifically, they've done studies that people can actually identify distinguishing features on a face that is outside of the distance they could see it. So if you know what somebody looks like, you can see them better. That is because your brain fills in their face because you already know what they look like. You'd be surprised how often this happens. I mean, right now, every one of us has 2 blind spots in front of us, actually directly off to either direction, because that's where the attachment is for your eyeball. You actually cannot see. Like, it looks like I can see the entire room when I look out. There are 2 blind spots, one directly diagonally to the right, one diagonally to the left, where I actually cannot see. Physiologically, it is impossible for me to see those spots, and yet I have filled them in my brain.
Yeah, our brains cheat.
Your brains cheat. They cheat a lot, and it's uncomfortable for a lot of people to realize that first-hand accounts are actually, eyewitness testimony is the worst kind of testimony in court, primarily because it changes over time. People reinterpret their memories. The police get into a lot of trouble for showing a photo of someone and then showing a lineup, because the people are something like 70% more likely to pick that person because they said that guy looks kind of like this. They saw a picture, then they see the guy. They've already filled in the box in their brain that says the person looks like they filled in the picture. And so when they see the person, they remember that is the guy that mugged them, even though it's not, because your brains cheat a lot. I mean, sound, sight, touch, for that matter, these are all, pardon me for saying, primarily bullshit. You don't see, feel, taste, or touch most of what you see, feel, taste, and touch. The older you get, the more it happens because you've built up this repository of data that you can fill in reality. But reality doesn't necessarily look anything like what we think it does. It's just that out of habit, we filled in these things. So, it's uncomfortable for a lot of people. A lot of people would prefer to believe in the supernatural rather than the fact that, you cheat all the time, every day, with every experience. And it's uncomfortable for people, but, it's true. So this is why this sort of experience raises an eyebrow with me.
It is really the greater mystery, isn't it? The thing that we're more afraid of is that, we actually don't really understand the world at all. No, it's ghosts. So
that's something good. Colleen, before we let you go, do you have anything else?
No, that was it.
Fantastic. Thank you very, very much for your call.
Very,
very much.
All right. Thanks for calling in.
Have a nice one.
Okay. Bye.
Yeah, so one of the unintended consequences of doing this show about the paranormal and ghost experiences, I have to say, is it turns out we're getting a lot of eyewitness testimony.
Well, that's to be expected.
And it's hard to so the caller who saw the two dogs. Mm-hmm. Okay. I don't really have any.
There's nothing to substantiate it. It's like a personal first-hand experience is good for you.
Yeah.
It doesn't actually present anything for anyone else. I mean, there's some people that, and this is not to criticize or belittle either of the people that we've had call in, but there are people that think they're Napoleon. There's one guy that talked to his neighbor's dog. I mean, things happen in your brain. They just do. Yeah. And if you cannot express it or show, that's actually the idea behind science, is you need to be able to, other people need to do the same experiment, get the same result. Because if they can't, your experiment is probably faulty in some way. And that's my biggest problem with eyewitness testimony of any variety, specifically when it comes down to things which, there's no actual evidence. And by that I mean scientific, provable evidence that exists. You've got a premise, and this fulfills the necessity you have for that to be true, but it doesn't actually show it to anybody else.
Right. All right. Well, let's move on here.
On a lighter note.
Yeah.
This is something that just happened to be recently, and something that, I'd like to get off my chest, and I'd like to express this to Tony, one of our producers. Tony has apparently been shocked at my dislike for onions. And this has nothing to do with ghosts or the supernatural. It's just something, it's just something that gives me the red ass.
Okay.
I don't like onions. As a small child, I didn't like onions and peppers. I realized, what, I like peppers, I just don't like onions. And so I tell people this. You know what they do? They sneak the onions. My cousin Michael, for one Thanksgiving, pureed the onions. He put the onions, pureed them, and put them in the stuffing. I was sick for 3 days. I've taken to having to tell people I am allergic to onions because they do not understand it. They say, how can you cook without onions? Seriously, if you are such a bad cook, such a poor chef, that one ingredient is the crutch you need to continue on, maybe you're a bad cook. I understand that onions provide flavor. They tenderize meat. They do any number of other things. Why is it that I, the simple man that does not enjoy the onion, why I am stuck lying to people in restaurants? I had this poor woman come back to me and say, in the lentil soup, I can't get you the lentil soup. There are onions in the base. And I'm like, yeah, I know, that'll be fine. She said, but you said you're allergic to onions. I said, that's just because if I don't say that, you people will try and sneak them in. They'll be on my hamburger. They'll be in my chili. They'll be in my lasagna. That's fine. Okay, I won't order lasagna. If I get a salad and you cover it with onions, then you take them off. I can still taste the damn onions. I'm not trying to rant on about something completely innocuous, because I know a lot of people are thinking, well, that's just silly. Don't be ridiculous. It's not like the pork to the Muslims or the Jews where they're going to hell for eating a pig or whatever it is. I'm not sure exactly how that works. The problem think about the onion. Let's imagine the onion. What if the onion were a person? You know this person. You know this person well. No. You know the outer layer. There's another layer. And another layer, as there want to be with people. There's layer after layer. But with the onion, you get all the way down to the core, and you know what there is? No onion. It's nothing but layers. It's nothing but layers. It is a non-existent entity. Why people shove this goddamn thing down my throat? They scorn me. I say, I'd like no onions. They say, okay, covered in chives. You know that's an onion, right? They go, what? No. So I have to give a speech when I go to restaurants. I would like no onions, no scallions, no chives. I'd like nothing in the onion family. I am fine with garlic. Just keep away the onions. And they look at me like I'm a crazy person. I've gone off on this 3-minute tirade while ordering my damn soup. And these people do not understand. I do not like them. I hate them. And I don't, I'm not trying to sound like a crazy person. This seems like random and out of the blue. And I'll tell you that it is not. It is not. I try so hard. And then I have to watch who I eat in front of, because I like salsa. You ferment those onions, you leave them in the salsa for long enough, and they're quite tasty. I don't like the fresh onions. So if anybody ever catches me eating salsa, they say, oh, you must like onions. Then they start cramming onions in everything. I say, well, I don't like onions. They say, well, you haven't tried my onions. Oh my God, leave me alone. What is wrong with you people? You people have some sort of psychological disorder. You're trying to poison me, and I hate you for it. And this is not directed toward anyone in particular, because I have been doing my best to get over this.
Okay.
I've been trying hard to get past it, because a lot of people use onions. I'm not trying to inconvenience people. I will say that I have had more than one Christmas dinner where I had macaroni and cheese from a box because someone did not listen. Why do people lack the common courtesy to listen to what people say and assume they're telling the truth? I know people that don't like cake. So I don't like cake.
I don't like cake.
I know you don't. You're the person that I know that doesn't like cake.
Okay.
I don't like cake, and people say, well, you haven't tried my cake. It's like, seriously? Why do you think you're so incredibly special? You need to calm down. You need to relax. You need to believe that people know what they like. People know what they want. And that is my very brief rant about onions. And I apologize if that took anyone off guard. If I threw you off, if I came at you a little bit, anybody out there that really likes onions, you have to understand and respect. There are people like me in the world. We are an oppressed minority, and we will take it no longer.
Well, you haven't tried my onions.
I will stab you with a pencil. I will stab you right in the eye with a pencil.
So, as vehement as you are about your onion, I would say it's probably on the level with me and my position on cake. So we'll have to
Why
get to that.
Why do people not believe you?
I know.
They think you're lying.
Yep. All right. Well, that's your position on onions notwithstanding. I'm going to go ahead and move forward to a very brief and truncated. There's 28 minutes left.
Oh, that's goodness gracious, pudding pie.
And truncated science you may never have heard of. So I was going to talk about the technology of ghost hunting. So this is going to be a good time. The first thing I wanted to address, and I guess after this far into the show, I'm not as surprised as when I started, that a CBS News poll from back in 2010 states that nearly half of Americans believe in ghosts. 48% of Americans believe in ghosts.
48%.
22% have personally seen or felt the presence of a ghost. And it's absurd. Americans under 45 are much more likely to say they have seen a ghost than those who are over 45. Let's see what else. Yet 78% of people across the board believe in life after death. 78% of people, which kind of falls in line with the number of people who are not atheists.
That is actually true.
Yeah.
It's it's around 15%. So there's maybe 7% of people that are still on the fence there.
Well, those are the Buddhists, I guess.
Yeah.
Buddhists. We should have some interesting emails regarding our show on Buddhism, and maybe we'll have some interesting emails regarding our show on ghosts and the paranormal.
Indeed.
I guess we'll see. So I just wanted to go through. I was going to read a bunch of ghost stories, but I think we got our fill of those. So I want to talk about ghost hunting tools. Now, a lot of this comes from a website called ghosthunting101.com. This website, conveniently, as well as discussing what sort of equipment you would need for ghost hunting, also sells the equipment. This is
that's very nice. Fitting
in line with this. The problem I have with the Harrisburg, Tennessee town, the idea of profiting off of this frou-frou nonsense. Cameras. They sell cameras, cameras being a valid scientific tool. Sure. If ghost images present themselves, getting them on film would go miles towards substantiating their existence. Usually we're presented with blurry photos, no explanation, some sort of glowy, smudgy kind of thing. Sometimes we get what are called ectoplasmic mist photos. One of the most dramatic types of positive, this is a quote from David Giuliano. One of the most dramatic types of positive photos we get on investigations are mist photos. Various shapes of fog or smoke-like substance hanging in the air. When these photos are taken, the mist is not usually visible to the photographer, but it shows up in the printed photograph later.
Do they mention if these are digital cameras or actually film cameras?
They're actually talking about 35 millimeter film cameras because they specifically address digital cameras and their usefulness later.
Oh.
Yeah. So the skeptics and debunkers have had a field day with the mist photo, of course, because it's ridiculous. They say it is everything from cigarette smoke to the photographer breathing on a cold night. So this same guy, David Giuliano, quoting here, wants to address the most common explanations and give a tip so you can make sure your photos are good quality evidence. First off, the missed photos are not cigarette smoke. He just declares that. He says, if you are an investigator, you should never smoke anywhere near an investigation site. Also, smoking causes lung cancer.
Emphysema and heart disease and complications during pregnancy.
This is simply common sense. In indoor investigation, make sure all sources of smoke, such as candles or fireplace, are out. Keep track of the times of year, temperature, humidity. After reviewing the data...
I'm sorry, what about dust?
Yeah, no, he doesn't address dust.
Okay, because I know dust in the air can reflect and be caught on film.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
He does say, my research showed that missed photos were obtained in all ranges of humidity and were actually more concentrated in the mid to lower ranges than in the higher ranges, which leads me to conclude that the moisture in the air is not the cause of missed photo either.
There's a difference in depending on how much humidity is in the air. Therefore, that is not an issue?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. There are numerous theories on which ectoplasm mist photos are, but ruling out what is not can get us one step closer to finding out what they are. This is the we don't have an explanation, so it must be God argument.
Yes.
This is the God of the gaps argument. We've ruled out mist, we've ruled out cigarette smoke, we've ruled out dust. So clearly that picture I have must be of a spirit of an animal or human being that died, passed over the realm, became non-corporeal, came back to haunt me, is not visible to the naked eye, but appears on film. Because I've ruled out that it's humidity. Well, okay, that doesn't not work. You can't know, not so much, no.
Well, that would be fine. I could say that if my garbage is torn up and there's no dog in the area and there are raccoon tracks, I can suggest it's a raccoon. I have other evidence that raccoons exist.
Right.
If you have other evidence that ghosts exist, you can say, oh, this may be a ghost. We all accept that they exist. Well, if this is your proof for existence, that's a little shakier.
Well, it's basically making the argument, somebody tore apart the garbage last night. But we have a dog. But the dog was, in a cage all night. Must have been a woolly mammoth. Really?
That seems perfectly reasonable.
Well, the dog was in a cage. Couldn't have been the dog.
Right. The problem solved. There you go.
Woolly mammoth. Okay. So, and that's not even getting to, so moving on, two more things here. Tape recorders. Tape recorders are useful if ghosts and spirits are actually communicating. They're most often used by ghost hunters to show EVP.
Okay.
Electronic voice phenomena. This is where you hear the scratchy voice or you hear the scratchy sound, and if you listen closely and you play it back slower than normal speed and amplify this and turn this around, you can maybe hear something that sounds like...
Okay, again, I'm sorry. It sounds like a voice, but it goes back to that show I was watching that I couldn't make Paul watch with me. It was a show about haunted animals. They had this barn, and they tape recorded, and they had this EVP, and they were playing it, and they talked about it.
Oh, I remember you talking about this.
Yes, and it was that they asked a question, and they got an answer, and this all sounded very compelling. I listened. I could hear the words in what they played.
Sure.
And then in passing, they noted that, first off, it was slowed way down, and second, it was like 6.5 hours later.
Yeah.
It was 6.5 hours later, and it was slowed way down so that it sounded like something. And they tried multiple speeds before they came across the one that sounded like words and sounded kind of like a response. That's so incredibly, that's so disingenuous, it's not even funny, and I cannot even believe these people believe what they claim to believe.
Well, this is going to suck because I'm not going to be able to think of it, and neither are you, but you and I attended a lecture. It was the same one with the guy who talked about the gorilla, the gorilla experiment.
Yeah.
Where he played back the sound which people said they heard lyrics to like Led Zeppelin in or something, and you couldn't tell until you were presented the lyrics afterwards. Then you listened to it again, your brain filled in
the blanks, yes,
and it was right there. I wish I could find out what it was. If I do find out, I'll tell you guys next week, or I'll put it up on the webpage or something, because that was the perfect example. That was electronic voice phenomena all over the place. So yeah, and that's not even the best one. What the best one is, and we're getting to it here, is the EMF detector. electromagnetic frequency detector. This is the thing that all the ghost hunting shows used, all the ghost hunters use. They wave this magic box around and it detects a difference in the electromagnetic field, and they report that means that there is ghosts. This is the most absurd thing out of all of these, because electromagnetic fields are present everywhere.
Everywhere.
You know how you can basically just get radio, with the antenna? This is because an electromagnetic wave is coming in. Microwaves generate electromagnetic waves. Light bulbs generate electromagnetic waves. The electronic circuitry in your house, any sort of equipment that you're using, the friggin' EMF detector.
That was going to be what I said. The EMF detector produces electromagnetic energy.
Yeah, and so what they do with this magic box is they wave it around and say, oh, look, the needle jumps. That must mean that there's a ghost, because it just so happens that the needle will jump on an EMF meter no matter where you move it, because there's varying electromagnetic frequencies everywhere. And so it's a great little device to show, look, my needle's moving. That means that means there's ghosts. That means there's ghosts.
Is there any evidence to suggest that ghosts produce electromagnetic radiation?
No.
None whatsoever.
There's absolutely nothing.
Okay. So the fact that the needle moves is what they've got to show, that when the needle moves, it's a ghost. The needle moved, therefore it's a ghost, because I said when the needle moves, there's a ghost, because the needle moved when I said there was a ghost.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So let me just read this one thing on it. This comes from the same source. This David Giuliano talking about this equipment on ghosthunting101.com, I think it was. Quote, when using the EMF as a tracking device, look for fluctuations of 2.0 to 7.0. This usually indicates spirit presence. Anything higher or lower normally has a natural source.
Higher or lower?
Yeah.
But not there. We don't have anything that'll produce anything in that frequency.
Apparently not.
We've got this big gap.
But I just want to know, okay, so where did you get number one, those are unitless numbers, 2.0 to 7.0. There's no units on this piece of paper.
That is true.
But also, what's the correlation? I'm sorry, 3.9? That's definitely a ghost. Because all the other times when I got a 3.9, the ghost came out of the pirate ship and shook my hand and we took photographs and went to Neverland. Seriously, how are you substantiating that a 3.9 means it's a ghost?
Well, they did say it with a level of assurance that makes me believe.
And so, if you ever wondered, you'll hear it on these ghost shows, of which there's so many.
There really are.
They'll talk about the EMF meter. Well, that's what they're talking about. They're talking about the electronic radiation that comes from normal wiring. Physics Brian points out that it could be from muons from space or power lines or any number of different things. Can give you these fluctuations. Yet these pieces of equipment are used. They're used by shows like Ghost Adventurers on the Travel Channel,
Ghost Adventurers,
Paranormal State on A&E, Ghost Hunters on the Sci-Fi Channel, and seriously, A Haunting on the Discovery Channel. Which, didn't they change their name to the Science Channel?
No, the Discovery Channel, the Science Channel changed their name to yeah, no, they're two different channels.
Okay.
They're two different channels.
Discovery... Can't we have one friggin' channel that isn't overrun by, oh my God, we found Noah's Ark on the History Channel. We have Ghost Hunters on the Discovery Channel. I don't even know. So, there's tons of shows like these. The shows typically involve people running around in low light conditions with low light cameras, breathing hard and saying, "Did you hear that?" So the equipment's being sold on the internet,
and it's in infrared, and they've got the green. Everything's green.
The greeny green camera that makes it all spooky like, and people's eyes glow all crazy like. So, ghost hunting, like alien hunting, it has a similar problem, and that problem is one of technology. For years, we've been presented with these grainy photographs of glowing globes, scratchy sound recordings, and anecdotal reports. But technology has grown by leaps and bounds. If we were getting 200, or let's say we were getting 20 photographs of otherworldly spirits a year before everyone was walking around with a camera in their pocket, then why are we not getting 20,000?
20,000 absolutely perfect, crisp, digital quality photographs.
Yeah, we're not.
And where's Bigfoot?
Yeah, we have no further information on aliens, no further information on ghosts, because these things are not real.
Yep.
And the last point I want to make is, we do like to scare one another. We like to be scared. I think, the one caller talked about how she enjoyed horror movies, and that kind of led her into creating this box about, otherworldly things and spirituality and things like that. That's fine. I mean, ghosts are a particular one, since a majority of the people in America, at least, are religious of some way, shape, or form. Ghosts don't actually fit in very well with Catholicism or Christianity or Judaism or Islam. And so it's like you create this...
Or Buddhism.
This one magical wall, and on one side of it you put, science and reason and rationality, and then over the wall you have the crap you believe in regarding your God. And then over another wall, because you have to keep it separate from that, is the crap you believe in regarding ghost dogs. So you just keep creating walls and walls and boxes and boxes. And one of the numbers that, just to throw out here, the number of people who have ever been born is predicted at 106,456,367,669,000.
That does seem like a lot.
Yeah. So I don't know what percentage of these spirits are refusing to go into the light. But
you're suggesting there would be exponentially more ghosts as time went on?
Yeah.
As there are exponentially more people as time goes on and they die?
Why aren't ghost dogs just appearing on everyone's bed every night?
And why do the stories about ghosts seem to be getting fewer and further between until all the ghost hunting shows come on TV, and then they become more and more common?
Yep, and then they pop right back up.
Yep, as long as people believe it, it is true.
Okay, so that's a brief, truncated science you may never have heard of. Josh and I are going to just dive right into you're wrong, and let me tell you why.
Okay, our topic today is refusing to perform a kidney transplant for a developmentally disabled 3-year-old child because of the risk of further brain damage due to anti-injection medications. Now, how are we going to turn that into a two-sided issue?
That's a little bit of a mouthful there, but I think clearly what we're talking about is a developmentally disabled 3-year-old needs to have a kidney transplant, should she have it or not.
Okay, now keep in mind that the medication they give you can cause brain damage.
Yes.
So it can make it can lower your cognitive capacity or your intellect or what have you. Mm-hmm. And this person is already limited and diminished in that respect. All right, now everyone, please, we will be accepting any phone calls and emails about this, but remember, we are randomly picking sides and arguing them to the best of our capacity.
Yep. So,
judgments aside on this one.
Okay, so I'd say heads is she should have the operation, and you take the coin.
It is heads.
All right, so you get to argue that she should have the operation. I get to argue that she should not have the operation.
Fantastic.
I'll go ahead and open this up.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. Usually the positive goes first, but if you're dying to, please.
Well, what we're talking about here, and I know, again, it's a mouthful. I want to try and make these issues clear. What we're talking about is a mentally incapacitated and developmentally disabled 3-year-old who needs a kidney transplant, and that's fine. However, the medication used to suppress the immune system from catabolizing, from cannibalizing the kidney after they put it in, does have the side effect of causing brain damage. Mm-hmm. And the issue is
may have the side effect of causing brain damage.
Yes, the issue is whether or not this operation should be performed, because the amount of brain damage that this person could experience could be greater than the average person's amount of brain damage. They actually could wind up experiencing so much brain damage that this little 3-year-old girl could be in a persistent vegetative state. And so because of this, the doctors in the hospital refused to do this operation. Mm-hmm. And I agree with them. And the reason why I agree with them is because, so in any operation, it is the surgeon and the facility's job to do a cost-benefit analysis. And for this particular girl, in this particular situation, there's indications that she could continue on with a course of treatment of dialysis, that a kidney transplant isn't an immediate life or death situation from her, and the benefit that she would get from simply just not having to go to dialysis once a week is not substantial enough to outweigh the amount of damage that could be caused by this girl experiencing this operation and taking this medication and damaging her already kind of messed up system and putting her...
Possibly damaging her already messed up system.
You keep going down that route, but this is anything that's possible is something that needs to be considered when weighing the positives and negatives of doing this operation. I think the risks far outweigh the rewards in this particular case.
You have no idea what the risks or rewards can be. You don't know. And again, every time somebody goes under general anesthesia, there's the possibility of death. People do it all the time.
So you're saying that doesn't exist this time?
I'm saying it does.
Okay, so
and I'm saying
greater...
your argument suggests that people should never go under general anesthesia.
I don't
Your
think that's my argument
suggests
at all.
that people should never get organ transplants. It's the only possible conclusion to this. Unless you want to create a fake wall, you can say, well, it only occurs with 3-year-old developmentally disabled people. It does not exist with, other 3-year-olds. 3-year-olds with a cardiac malfunction. 3-year-olds that may have some other difficulty that went along with this illness. You know what? Let's just practice eugenics. Why don't we just do that? That'll be a great idea. It'll save us all a lot of cost in medical care. And see, that's fantastic. Your argument that, this person is below human is kind of disgusting.
Okay, I need to...
wait, do humans deserve the opportunity to live a full and fulfilling life? Do they deserve that?
Number one...
Do they deserve that?
Okay, number one, I need to applaud you.
Not answering that question.
I will answer your question in time. I need to applaud you, though, for laying out very, very clearly to our audience the very subtle difference between a paper tiger and a straw man. There was a very nice paper tiger, because I never at any point went to any sort of eugenics argument. I was actually the rational one weighing the particular outcomes of this particular patient. You're
How much
the one
does it cost?
making
How much does
the
it cost
blanket
to educate?
statements.
How much does it cost to educate someone who's developmentally disabled?
Statements.
That could cost a ton of money to do. How much does it cost to set the leg of someone who's developmentally disabled? How much are they going to produce in life? These are relevant cost-benefit analysis.
Yes, they are.
Cost-benefit analysis, that's fine. There's a tremendous cost to medical care. And
you're talking about
baby box. You said cost-benefit analysis. I'm just doing what you said.
I'm talking about a non-monetary expense. I'm talking about the cost in terms of damage to the patient.
I'm talking about the cost in terms of damage to the patient.
No, you're not. You're bringing up a monetary argument to try and pigeonhole me into saying I'm making some sort of eugenics argument about how we should not spend money and resources.
She does not deserve
I never
a
said
kidney.
that.
That's what you said. Your argument can only function if she does not deserve a kidney.
No, my argument is that's an absolutely absurd position. My argument is that the person who she is could be lost by the risks of this operation.
As is always the case.
Yes, but the risks here are greater. You
are
can't
they?
just...
Do you know
yes,
that?
They are. Your argument that general anesthesia is a risk. This is true. She's going to experience general anesthesia.
Yes.
Your argument that there is a risk for the average patient is true. She's going to experience all of those risks. On top of those risks, she is going to experience a greater amount of risk of... Not a greater amount of risk of brain damage, but a possibility that the brain damage could limit her functional capacity to a greater extent than it would an average person.
You're saying that as if it's true, and you can support that by what?
I can support that by saying it's absolutely a possibility. She has diminished brain capacity currently.
It's absolutely a possibility that any person could have, there could be a genetic predisposition that we have not identified. It's true of anyone. In fact, the amount of brain damage she suffers from the drugs that she gets after the operation could get rid of the part of the brain that she doesn't have already. The limitation she has, it could cause the same functional disability, which would put her in the same category she was in before. You don't know that that's not true. You don't have any idea.
Yeah.
You don't exactly know what part of the brain causes the developmental disability that she suffers.
Or she could experience the same amount of average brain damage that the average kidney transplant patient experiences.
So statistically, she's identical.
In her situation, could put her in a persistent vegetative state.
As it could with anyone.
Not with the amount of frequency. Frequency is not the right word.
You know this to be
frequency is not the right word.
Just saying that.
I know this to be true.
No, you don't.
I absolutely know this to be true. There's, of course, a greater... She only has... Let's just, put a random number on it and say that she has 60% brain capacity.
Let's just put a random number on it. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I think your mic's cutting out again, unfortunately.
I apologize.
Okay, so she has 60% brain capacity, and if she loses 10% brain capacity on top of it, then she's going to experience a greater diminishment of brain capacity than the average person.
I do not believe that is proven, that is shown, and that is in any way evident from what we have here.
Do you deny that it's a possibility?
Do you deny that it's a possibility that she will die from the general anesthesia? You
No.
don't, and you have no idea of what you're saying is true or not.
I deny that it's a probability.
Okay, I deny that it's a probability that... Well, I deny that...
Well, a likely probability.
I deny that you have substantial proof that your position is supported in any way. You are just saying that. You have no proof of whether or not that's true. You're saying that, and that sounds nice. It sounds nice that she's got, there's problems with her brain, so if they cause something else that causes problems with her brain, that makes her risk more likely. No, the brain is incredibly complex. You're saying that two-dimensionalizes, oversimplifies, and makes it seem as though, your brain's this one thing that if something's wrong with it, it lowers it down by 10%. Well, she only has 60%. If there's a possibility that you lose 5%, then it would lower her down to 55% statistically, when that's not necessarily true. She could come out, even with the damage to the brain, to her cognitive capacity, come out with exactly the same mental capability, even with the damage, and you don't know that that's not true.
Listen, the patient doesn't need it. It's a convenience to the family to not have to take her to dialysis once a week. She has a greater risk than the average patient. The average patient, who they still have to make a determination as to whether or not the operation should be performed or not. And in many cases, they don't. This particular patient does not need the operation, and the risks are greater than for the average operation. She should not have the operation.
I think that's unreasonable, and I think if you applied that same logic to any person with any kind of disability in any medical circumstance, you would end up with a eugenic perspective, and that was what I began with. That your position...
Because that's your boxing into a corner.
That your position boxes yourself. You can't just apply one thing to one place and not apply it everywhere. If this is how you determine medical necessity, this is how you determine medical necessity. Simple as that.
All right. Well, we want to know what you think. Email us at reason@wnyatheist.org. So, this is Josh and I kind of threw a bunch at each other when we were kind of watching the clock as we're doing this. This actually comes from a real life situation where this girl does need to have this operation. It was a blog post that a friend of mine from Facebook sent to me, and it's written by the family member, so there's no actual medical expertise discussed in the article. My concern is the family member actually wants to donate the kidney, and the people who are allowed to proffer or sign conformed consent are the family members,
right?
Informed consent, and she's not taking a kidney away from a normal person who needs one. There's no reason to justify that this woman should not have this operation.
Right, it's not a question of putting her on the donor list. It's a question of performing the procedure. They've got a kidney which would not exist for anyone else on the donor list, so it's not taken away from anyone. And
Josh is right. There is no evidence that further brain damage would occur with this particular patient, with this particular patient's brain capacity. So it seems to me, again, there was no medical expertise presented in the article, but it seems to me that this is a case of doctors covering their asses trying to avoid a lawsuit, and that's why they're not going to do this operation for this mentally underdeveloped 3-year-old girl who needs a kidney.
So, on that up note,
yeah. All right. Well, it's been a fun show all the way around.
It has been. We've had ups, we've had downs, we've had swerving here and there, emotional roller coasters as we like to do.
We might have gone over 45 minutes on this one.
I think this one barely went over an hour.
Yeah, that seems about right. So next week, we're going to be talking about abortion.
Abortion.
Oh, abortion's going to be a good time.
It'll be a very up show. I can't wait for the argument. Hopefully it applies.
So next week is January 22nd, is Sunday, and Roe v. Wade was decided upon by the Supreme Court January 22nd.
90 seconds.
Really? That's what you're going to do? Okay. It was decided by the Supreme Court in 1973. So we hope to get as many and more callers. Hopefully people have interesting things to discuss regarding abortion. I know people have interesting things to discuss, and we hope to hear from you.
All right. Thank you for listening, and you folks have a nice day.
All right. Farewell.